Welcome, everybody, to the Beacon of Light podcast this evening. Tonight, we have the most beautiful woman with us today. We have Miss Abbie Lorene. And
Yeah.
before we get talking to her, let's jump in and get going with what we have to do.
I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now.
And we're back. So,
Okay.
Miss Abbie Lorene, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, I'm a mom to four, a special needs son who's super adorable. And I have three beautiful daughters who are all in different stages. Teenage year, kind of preteen, and still kind of young. And really just a very passionate person who has kind of decided to follow her passion from a lot of the life experience that she's lived.
Awesome. Great summary. So tonight we're going to be talking about My Walk, My Way. And with this book, tell us a little bit about how you got started with the idea of wanting to share your story.
Wow. Well, so the idea and this whole deal was a beautiful thing how it kind of came together, but I didn't know that I wanted to share my story at first. It took me a little bit of bravery, a lot of therapy, and a lot of hard circumstances that got me to that point. I had some struggles with some pulmonary embolism blood clots, and at that point, I knew that tomorrow was not guaranteed for me, and from that point on, that it would never be guaranteed. So I just decided one day that since I could no longer physically do a lot of the things that I had been doing in my life, that I wanted to make a difference in a different way. And this opportunity kind of God opened that door and just brought it right onto my plate in a matter of like 2 days. I was a signed author, and it was a passion that I've had since I was very young. Just not something that I ever thought that would actually happen or come to fruition. So it was a blessing.
Amazing. So in this sudden opportunity to share your story, well, what is your story?
Well, my story is a lot, as April would tell you when she saw my first draft of this book, of my chapter anyways. So a little bit of my story is that I grew up in a really hard childhood, a very unstable home situation with a lot of abuse. And I bounced around in a lot of homes, and that came down to some foster care, one parent to the next parent to some extended family, getting pregnant at 15, being a part of a forced adoption situation, a lot of grief, and a lot of mental health turmoil that I was going through. So I was really blessed to have my grandparents take over and kind of plant some good seeds into my life. And at that point, I just knew that I wanted to finish high school, that I wanted to do something with my life and make it worth, the sacrifice that I'd done for my son, Noah. And, as a birth mother, I just thought, one day I'm going to have a family. And when I have this family, I am going to make every moment count and make all the good choices I can. Unfortunately, throughout a very long marriage, it turned abusive. And it took me a very long time to leave that marriage. So I am almost finished with going through a 3-year-long divorce. So I ended up February 7th of 2019, laying my head for the second time at a women's shelter's on their bed. And that was a really hard path for me to navigate and walk through and do it alone in a whole different state, alienated from family, or really any friends. And because I had children, that was a really hard thing to share, for the fact that I had a teenage daughter that, didn't want everybody to know about all the details to those things. So I kind of walked that path alone for a while. And I just remember laying my head the first night on a pillow at that shelter thinking, I don't miss him. My heart doesn't miss him. My body doesn't miss him. Nothing misses him. And now what am I going to do? And I really, really just prayed and I cried out to God and just said to him, like, I need you to help me with this path because I don't know how to walk this. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to believe that somewhere along the way, you'll reveal to me what it is that I'm supposed to do because I'm feeling really lost right now. Eventually, that led me into the medical complications that I had. And thankfully, a year after that situation of being in the shelter and getting a place for the first time ever on my own, that I'd met a really amazing man. And through the very beginning of the process of us dating, he loved me through the medical complications that I had and has walked that path with me. There are days that I can't get out of bed. There are some days I can. Today happens to be one of those days, and I'm so grateful for that. And, just as life has been kind of messy, God blessed me with a special needs son on top of all of this. So that was the hardest part for me, was making sure that he had stability and that he had all of his needs met. And somehow it just kind of all worked itself out, really. And I guess I couldn't complain about any of that.
That's true. When we look at the perspective of the
Mhm.
blessings instead of the complaints, I go, girl, it's so easy to complain, right?
Yes,
It's tougher to go, okay, let me look at this. What are the blessings? Still can
yes.
breathe, still can live. Hey, heart's still going. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Right? Differently for you. There's a lot of different things in those complications.
Yeah.
And as this stuff starts to sandwich on us, what part of the story did you want to share within that chapter?
So I didn't get the opportunity to share the domestic violence part of my life. So I'm writing that right now. Um, I did get the opportunity, to share in my bio that I had been a survivor of that, and I am quite an advocate. Um, so with my chapter that I wrote, it is chapter 9, Generations of Impact, and is on page 106 of My Walk, My Way. I really kind of dive into the day that I moved into the home that I'm in right now, where I had just remembered how grateful I was to have woken up that day and still be alive, and remembering what the doctors were telling me of, like, we don't know how we saved you, but something happened and you were saved. And me thinking, I want my daughters to never live through the pain that I have lived through, but I do want them to see what kind of warrior I am, and that when things get hard, that, they sometimes can get messy, but that you can walk through it depending on how you choose to react to the situation. So my daughter looked at me and just said, Mom, do I look fat in this? Ugh, I look so fat in this. And in my mind thinking, oh Lord, no. This girl cannot walk around thinking she ain't beautiful, because she is beautiful. And I used to be that girl up until 2 years ago. I could not look at myself in a mirror and tell you something I loved about myself. It took me some very hard work and me telling myself, like, I want to love every part of myself, even the parts that are not considered perfect to the world. And I wanted to show my daughters that. So I write about how my daughter spoke about these things and how I could see myself in her, and how I realized that her negative self-talk had actually come from me, and that I didn't even realize as a mother that I had projected this paradigm of beauty, of what society's world says beauty is, onto my daughters. And that just broke my heart. So honestly, it was a really awakening moment for me to remind myself to not speak negatively of myself, for the fact that my children were listening, that other women were listening, and for me to tell myself that I need to find a way to help create change in this. And having this book was a great outlet for me to write about the generational effect of women speaking poorly of their bodies and of their self-image, and that at some times some of us are louder than others. I'm that girl. that somebody needs to speak to the fact that it's okay to be confident in your body. It's okay to feel beautiful on the inside and the outside. And that is just really important to me because I feel like I was brought up to feel ashamed of my body, to not appreciate, this body that I was gifted with, you know, um, and even quote unquote being the skinny girl in school. I still got made fun of. I still struggled with my body image because my perspective may not have been in the right place. Um, but also because we have so many outside influences. And really, the only change that I know I can make is in my own home and by hopefully projecting that out into the world, for other generations of daughters to say, hey, it's okay for me to love myself and to think I'm beautiful with makeup and without makeup, dressing how I want, however it feels good to me. Um, just allowing each other to be okay as women with how each other loves each other or loves ourselves entirely. So really that's kind of where I went. I went to, just the idea that I needed to make some change. And I spoke a little bit of my hardships and the idea that if I can do it, of all people in the world, if I can make these changes and change my mindset, anybody can do this. It's not, there's no, as the blog post says, there is not a magic wand. I wish there was. It'd just be so nice and easy, but without that hardship, you can't really appreciate the journey that you've walked through. And it really just, it brings much more passion to why I speak on what I do about loving ourselves, the inside and the outside.
Very, very true. Building up the inside is the toughest part
Yep.
because it's stuff we don't really see and other people feel it differently. How we build up the inside for our daughters, for our family, for our sons is such an important part as moms. It's almost like we have to take this banner back
Yeah.
ourselves and show and share within the family this is what is real. And this is
Yep.
what's evil. Don't listen to the rest of the world. And to prepare them for the things that are really, really important. It's so interesting how so many of us go on this journey, the journey of this idea of the ideal. And as we march through, it's constantly comparing, or it's bullied, or it's snickering at, or
Mhm.
and you just make this long list. Really, what does it come down to? How are we beautiful on the inside? What does that
Yeah.
mean, Abby? What does it mean?
For me, the inside beautiful is not me looking in the mirror saying, "Ooh, these stretch marks are so gross and ugly." And, as a warrior of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, my stretch marks and my scars on my body are much uglier per se than anyone else's because it doesn't heal the same way. So then it made me very self-conscious. So it's me walking into the mirror and looking at myself and picking apart every little imperfection that I've seen in society, that I've seen from other women, that, because I modeled when I was younger, and so even being immersed in modeling, just the idea that the inside of us has to really fit the outside of us as well. So you can be beautiful on the outside, but be really ugly on the inside. And I've seen this personally because of being in some of the modeling things that I had done. And because I'll say it, and I don't feel ashamed to say it, that I was gifted with a beautiful smile. I was gifted with, loving beauty type of things and doing my hair and makeup and nails. And even when I was heavier set for a short period of my life, I felt like, well, now that I look at it, that I was still beautiful. And so I feel blessed for that part. But I do know that there are so many women who identically look like me, and they have the most ugly attitude or the most ugly perspective, or they are very judgmental because of them being blessed with, quote unquote, society's idea of what beauty is. that means, the judgmental things, the mom shaming, the body shaming, the clothes that somebody's wearing. I, to the outside world, might look a certain way, but on the inside, I can only pray and hope that my inside comes through to my outside, and my words and my actions, and my personal relationships, professional relationships, things like that. And those are not all things that were very easy for me growing up, because I had a very judgmental parent in my life. I had somebody who was very toxic, and that spills over, and you start to become a product of your environment. And that is something that I had to be honest with myself, was to take personal accountability and personal responsibility for the fact that some of we notice that our children reflect to us our imperfections. And sometimes that's a good thing for us to be able to see that and say, maybe that's where I need to work better, or I need to work a little bit harder, because I didn't realize I was doing that. So they're like this reflection. And I think that it's a really awesome thing when you finally kind of become woke up to the fact that, hey, I need to make some changes, and I need to be honest about that. And that's where I was in my life. And I think every day that I wake up, I tell myself that I need to continue to keep working harder. I'm not going to hate myself or be angry with myself or talk negatively to myself. I'm going to say, you did a good job today, or maybe you didn't do as great of a job today, but tomorrow's a new day. If you're blessed to wake up, you have a new day to start it again. So if I messed up, I can redo this. I can make it better.
But really great attitude to go along with that beauty is that it's step by step, and how we're projecting ourselves on the inside should flow through on the outside. And you can tell something's off when the ugly is seeping through all that quote beauty. There is something really happening. And so we have to really teach the concept, and, to be fair, teach the response, right?
Yes.
So great example today. And I'm original on this because I'm teaching, we're doing things, I get a chance to sit at the computer, I'm starting to enter in some grades. I peek at the phone, and there is a message from my daughter. My daughter has put down something from her heart, and she said basically that somebody was bullying her about her outward appearance, and labeling her a certain way, we will say. So my mama heart is like, ugh, feeling it, and where are those kids?
Yeah. Yes.
It's kind of both thing right there. And I'm not really good at like, it's great. I think
No,
so.
me neither. Me neither. You'll always see all emotions on my face.
Yeah, they're kind of wore out. So of course the students are like, "What's wrong, Mrs. Juke?" I'm like, "Oh shoot, they're watching." Okay, well, I just got some news, and we're gonna take care of it at lunch, and I'll share if I can later. Because of course they were all like, "Oh no," because I couldn't. Anyway, the point is this affected my daughter, and the very next thing she texts me is, "My heart hurt. No go school tomorrow."
Oh.
So
Yeah.
then I start calling, emailing, snapping the pictures of what she sent me in the picture that, anyway, all of these things, send it off, and no one's responding at the school. And I'm like, what's happening? So I was able to text off to somebody else who's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Our phones are down. Our computers are down. We're just down right now. I'm like, okay. So can I send you the messages? Send it to her.
Yep.
He's like, we're on it. And I got a message that said we were on it. And I'm like, thank you. It's that idea of, grateful for that part. But that, ooh.
Yeah.
So this is the time for self-esteem.
Yep.
For her. And then, like, it went through the floor. And you're like, oh, she's almost 12. She's 12 on Thursday.
Oh.
No birthday, mom, no birthday. Can't me ugly. Oh,
No.
So we've got tonight, Miss Abbie. I'm like, okay, we're gonna be painting the inside of this beautiful, and we have action right away, right? So how many of you
Mhm.
out there have had those experiences? How and we can sit in the mire of the experience, right? I can be like, oh, or I can be like, how are we gonna paint it up today? Like tonight, like
Yeah.
after this, we gotta get together and just share, see what the feelings are, and then know and express what I know and what I see and what I feel, and let her know from others what they know, see, and what they feel. And the belief in that is so important. So the beauty on that insight and it, breaking the generation challenges is really it's up to us and that responsibility to see the perspective and to help the change happen.
Yes.
So, your chapter, what do you see going forward of what you want to do? Is there a thing you want to set up with youth? Tell me a
Yes.
little bit about this.
So as I was finishing writing this up, April happened to be the ghostwriter for this book, and I ended up going in and changing a lot just because my vision changed a little bit. And thank God for you, April, because I had stroke-like symptoms and was at Mayo Clinic, so my thoughts were very messy at that moment, and I couldn't piece them together as well as I would have liked. But once I got to that point at the very end of right, as the day as this is going in to be published in my mind, it was just it's gonna sound crazy. It does kind of sound crazy, but it was just like a flash for me in my memories of what it was like to walk through middle school and high school, even elementary school for myself, because I was the kid who was hungry. I was the kid who wanted school, never wanted school to be called off because I knew I was going to have a hot meal and a teacher and somebody who was going to be nice to me. Um, but I was made fun of because I had dirty clothes. I never owned anything brand new. I never had name brand clothes. I remember my first pair of Nikes that came from a thrift store. They were boys and in seventh grade. And I was so excited. And a bunch of girls made fun of me for wearing boys' Nike shoes. And I thought I was cool because I was wearing Nikes, but they weren't meant for girls. But I over even looked that because I just thought, oh, these are Nikes. Um, and because of my body shape. So yeah, I might be skinny per se, but I didn't have voluptuous curves. And that was very much pointed out to me. The words that were said to me because I was 15 and pregnant and still went to school that way, those things all really kind of set in my soul of what my worth was to me. I was not worthy of being loved. I was not worthy of anything because I was promiscuous in my younger years because, I made a poor choice because, I didn't get to wear clean clothes all the time because my life circumstances were messy. And then you go to school and all these kids just treat you so much differently and they can be very mean. And today's day and age, I know for my own daughter, who's a freshman in high school, how hurtful and mean girls can be. And that includes my own children because they've been taught from their peers, not just, how they're taught at home, but to react at certain points. And I've tried to explain to my daughters, like, listen, I know you're upset right now, but sometimes you do need to stop and think how you're going to react because you don't like how she treated you. You don't want to project that back out to them. Now, our kids sometimes have to learn hard lessons and sometimes don't make the best choices. So, in my heart, working through my children, my daughters very specifically, and their specific circumstances, which includes a daughter of mine who has Bell's palsy, and so half of her smile is crooked. We're writing a book right now about children who look different. My son has cerebral palsy, so he acts different than other children. I have another daughter who has struggled tremendously with a weight issue from some health complications. And then I have another daughter who has struggled, and she's the oldest, where she's always been super beautiful, but she just doesn't believe it. And just she doesn't see that everyone around her thinks of her as that way. But I can see because of what she's grown up in that I taught her those things. So my goal in that moment when that flash came across me was, Abbie, you need to go speak to youth and you need to find a way to give your story as almost like a testimony to them and show them that these words can actually hurt. Your actions do have consequences, that there are a ripple effect of things that happen throughout a person's life, and hope that they see that, not to make them feel some condemnation over that situation, but for them to hopefully slow down their thought process and think. So my movement in that moment was called "You're Worthy and You're Loved," or "You're Worthy and You Belong," because nobody feels like they really belong when there's somebody like myself who was transient in their life, or things have been messy, or maybe I wasn't the popular girl. I've never been popular. Um, that was never my thing. So I've always just kind of been my own weird person. And now I kind of embrace that and accept that not everybody around me loves me, and I'm okay with that. And I feel like it's so necessary for our youth to know that, because I already see the youth making great waves of change in certain political things, certain topics that other people would never speak about, which is, your last guest spoke about, sexual assault, and especially by men. Um, Domestic violence is hard at times to talk about. So just being honest and having that opportunity to speak to these children, and I'm talking about like 5th grade and up, talking with them and explaining to them that they are world changers, that they can make the world of a difference, and they could easily take responsibility for their actions, and they're responsible ultimately for how they feel about themselves inside. It's not just because some girl told you you're ugly or you look a certain way does not mean that's who you are. You are who you choose to be, and you have the opportunity to take those negative words and change them. But at that age, it just doesn't seem always possible to them. So I'm still working on a way to reach them in a bigger way, but that is my ultimate goal at this moment, including writing more awareness books about domestic violence. I'm writing with one of my daughters about her going through a physical situation of domestic violence at the hands of people who should have never done that to her. I'm writing with, the youngest one about her saying she doesn't see that her smile is different. She hears it, but I've told her since day one. I've never actually brought up to her that her smile is totally different, just that she's beautiful and God made her uniquely the way that he did for a reason. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad he did, because she's the kid who walks around and tells all these other little girls, please don't put on makeup. You look beautiful just the way that you are. You don't have to cover that up. It's okay. See, my smile's crooked. How beautiful is that? How beautiful is that for the innocence of a child to see that beauty, and no matter which way it looks. But we do know as they get older, they slowly start to realize that, well, society says that you should look this way. The magazine looks that way. So I personally have pictures behind me and all over my walls in my home of me doing awareness modeling, and none of them are airbrushed. And I support this business because this woman is with me on body positivity and not airbrushing pictures, and having all different sizes and shapes and different looks, because that's the reality of the world. I want my daughters to see what a real woman looks like, not somebody that's on a magazine because society says that you can be a size -2 with airbrushed face and your hips are, this size and done this because we use some digital imaging to do that. I mean, cool, awesome if we have some of that technology to do fun things. But I want to put it out into the world for young ladies and my son, to be who you are and be comfortable with who you are and love who you are in the skin that you're in. And even if that means it's not the same way that I look at mine, that's okay. I just want you to have that internal peace and happiness and love for yourself, to know that you are loved, that you are worthy, and that your looks are not going to fully define who you are and how you progress throughout life. Because look at me. I mean, I'm living proof of that.
Beautifully said. Well done. So everyone, get out there and grab a copy of my walk, My Way. It is on Amazon. We can drop the link down. I'm sure Miss Abbie Lorene also has it in a different place, and we'll put those links down below as soon as we sign off. Thank you so much this evening, and I hope you all get out there, be positive, paint your insides beautiful, and then believe in it. We'll see y'all later. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.